Welcome back to Blaster Master Zero. We're in another underground cave that's now overhead. Fuck you, wave beam.
At least it's an actual cave-looking place this time instead of a floating island.
So,
It gets very wild later in the game.
yeah, this game has the environments in this game get pretty like video gamey, I guess, for lack of a better word. Like, I like the aesthetic to this game. You know,
Yeah.
outside
Also, its soundtrack is amazing.
the soundtrack's pretty good. I think I prefer twos a little bit more, but this game still has really good music. The remix of the main Blaster Master theme is really, really good. I love that track. So, yeah. Although, oh god, the creatures there, the ones with the whatever these guys are, they remind me of a Shin Megami Tensei demon. That's just
Oh, the foot guys?
yeah, the foot guys that live in the toilet. There's a side quest in Shin Megami Tensei Strange Journey where one of them is haunting the toilet, and you have to. Nobody on your ship can go to the bathroom, so you have to kill it in order to get it out. And when you're done, your crewmate tells you to wash your hands because you just fought a toilet demon. So, you know, Shin Megami Tensei makes poop jokes. Everybody, this is a serious series about the philosophy of right and wrong, good versus evil. You know, whether or not freedom is something that we deserve or if it should be sacrificed for the good of the many. There's poop jokes. You can never be too old for a good poop joke. Man, the wave beam completely devalues the entire game.
Yeah, that's why they changed it for 2.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm just staring at you. You face the general direction of your enemy, and you just hold the fire button, and it's...
Nope, you have to tap it. You can't hold it, you have to fire.
Yeah, you know, it takes real pro gamer skill then.
Or you could just have a turbo controller.
Do they make turbo controllers anymore?
Third-party stuff, probably.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I feel like you get shamed more often than not if you use a turbo controller in modern games.
Who cares?
I know who cares, but it's just like, oh, you're using a turbo controller? Man, you couldn't even beat Dark Souls with that. You game plebeian.
Under what circumstance would playing Dark Souls be easier with a turbo controller?
I don't know. I don't know what Dark Souls actually is. Is it a cooking sim?
I am reminded of, just going through this game again, I'm reminded of a thought I had months ago when I was playing the second game. Do you know what would be neat? If as an assist trophy we had the Sophia 2 replace the Landmaster.
That would be that would be great. You know, I mean, you know what
They'll
though?
never
We
do
technically
it,
do have the Advance Wars tanks. That would kind of be, but then again, Nintendo likes to pretend Advance Wars doesn't exist, so I suppose it would still work.
No,
out.
I mean, no. The Advance Wars has their own assist trophy. I'm talking like, take what the Landmaster Final Smash did, give it the Sophia 3 skin job, and just have it be an assist trophy. Just have it go around like floating around and
what
shooting
is
and rolling over and
Advance
stuff.
Wars anyway?
It's Fire Emblem but with tanks.
Oh,
like
so,
literally, the gameplay is like 80% the same. Like,
so
It's also the same company.
So in other words, worse Valkyria Chronicles. Got it.
I mean, it's interesting. Like, instead of there's a lot of like stuff that you would associate with real-time strategy in there. Like, for example, you
Resource
create
management.
resource management. You have to create your units mid-map and stuff like that. It's interesting, but I just could never get into it as much as Fire Emblem.
Yeah, there was a little too much to keep track of in Advance Wars.
Yeah, I mean, granted, you know, it's probably a little bit easier to get into than like a StarCraft or something like that, because at the very least, you know, since it's turn by turn, you can think about your moves as much as you want, as opposed to in a real-time strategy, if you just spend too much time dicking around, you're gonna lose.
You're dead.
But they're more complicated than Fire Emblem in general, and that's saying something considering that Fire Emblem games aren't really easy. So
yeah, I mean,
well, it's Fire Emblem games aren't necessarily easy, but I wouldn't necessarily call them the most complicated things in the world.
Yeah,
that's true. I agree with that.
There, Three Houses normal mode and Fate's Birthright notwithstanding, earlier Fire Emblem games from around the time I assume we would be comparing that to Advance Wars were pretty
Yes.
punishing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, people still talk about stuff like Hector Hard Mode in the same vein that people talk about, like, SMT Nocturne or Dragon Quest II. So, you know. The game's definitely... Oh, and Thracia, whatever the hell numbers.
Darsha 776 or whatever.
Yeah. Thracia 385 over 2 days.
That. I mean, it's definitely hard, but that game's not just hard. It's really mean too.
Yeah, like, if I remember correctly, like, it's something like the first units you get are all swords, and then the map is entirely lances. Lance enemies. It's just like, why are you doing this? So
it's like, what did I ever do to you, game?
Yeah, so from what I could tell, that game's not particularly well designed in many ways. So maybe they'll remake it like they did the second Fire Emblem and make it...
I heard that if they were going to do any more remakes, they would probably do Roy's game next.
Well, I heard that game also has wonky elements to it as well, so that would... I could be okay with that. Honestly, that would probably be the game to get me to try Fire Emblem again, because I'm just not into it. I know everybody loves Three Houses right now, and I'm sure that game is excellent, but I'm just not in the mood for Fire Emblem at all. Plus, there's like 50 million games coming out this year, so money.
I'm trying not to jump on the Fire Emblem tangent right now because I'm so into it at the moment that we'd never get any talk about Blaster Master done if I got going.
As we can tell by your Twitter feed, yes.
Yeah, I'm on my second.
You like just beat one of the modes and you're doing the. Are you doing the yellow one now?
Yeah. I just beat Team Edelgard's Path and now I'm going with Claude because Claude is a bro and it's fun.
He's also pretty.
Well, you're not wrong, but you know, I'm also playing it on hard mode now, which is substantially more interesting in terms of gameplay.
Yeah, the normal mode for Three Houses is fairly easy.
I would say like the Three Houses normal mode starts out feeling challenging, but you have so many options for how to get powerful that by the end of the game, even if you only do like moderate grinding, you're gonna have like 1 or 2 units that can just destroy everything.
How hard would you say what does the hard mode change? Because if I remember correctly,
it's mostly damage and health values.
Because
you do tend to miss or miss a lot more and be hit a lot more as opposed to dodging a lot of stuff in my experience, but the actual damage that things are doing isn't that much different. So it's more like you just have to think more. The real change is that you also don't have infinite repeatable battles to grind from. So you gotta...
Hard mode is basically what like the GameCube and GTA Fire Emblems were.
Yeah.
Alright, because I remember that in like Awakening, they would like give, once you got to Hard and Lunatic, they would give enemies ridiculous skills that they shouldn't have, which made the game like really frustrating from what I could tell. Then again, I also never really bothered with the higher difficulties for Awakening.
I rarely do.
I think I tried to do hard and then gave up by like chapter 10 and just played normal after that point.
Well, Three Houses brings back the concept of Mila's turn wheel from Echoes, where you can go back however far you need to undo a mistake.
Yeah, so that, will save you a couple hours. Like, no joke. Literally half of my playtime in Conquest was resets. Because
you kept losing units to stupid mistakes, right? Or to ambushes.
So my in-game time total was 40 hours. My 3DS my 3DS system time total for Conquest was 80. So I spent literally 40 hours in failed runs, dying and having to restart.
That sounds about right.
Yeah.
So,
hi, Greg.
It's always a bit weird when there's like a completely flat-looking floor, but like you're surrounded by liquid. It's like in these 2D graphics, the perspective is a bit weird, in that it looks like the ground is completely flat, but for some reason the liquid won't come past a certain point.
Oh no, I had the weirdest thing regarding that at DragonCon this past week, and you can tell when this was recorded. So I took the train down, and at the station where you get off, there's an extremely long escalator up because you have to go up to street level. They have the tiles diagonal to the actual point of the escalator. So if you're moving up and down and kind of like looking towards the sides, as you will do because it's a narrow subway escalator, you get the weirdest sense of vertigo from it. It's weird.
Huh.
Like, I was worried I was just going to fall forward and tumble down or something.
I guess I'd have to see it to know what you're talking about there.
Kind of the same, yeah.
It's hard to describe.
This is probably my least favorite zone in the game, if I had to pick one. Not that there's anything wrong with it. I think
It's the most boring.
You have to, like, walk... This is one of the things about this zone, about this game, where it's trying to do Metroidvania stuff, but it's still a very linear game. For the most part, you have
This is the only zone that has a upgrade you have to come back for.
Yeah, because... I mean, this is really the case with most Metroidvanias. Most Metroidvanias aren't really non-linear games. They just have you zigzag around the map a whole lot.
Yeah, and the non-linear stuff is mostly just optional upgrades. If you don't care about those, you can just go from point A to point B.
So, I kind of liked that, what's that game called? The sequel kind of made things a little bit more straightforward in that each area is smaller, so you don't really have to backtrack in and out in between areas as much.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, I get what's going on here. The water's rising and falling, except the sprite work doesn't even look remotely like that's what it's doing. Huh.
Yeah, basically. There's a lot of different... Part of why I like these sections is that there's a lot of different gimmicks involved with them.
Aside from the first area, every stage kind of has their own gimmicks to each one.
Yeah, which make them more interesting to me than the tank stuff, because the tank stuff is mostly the same no matter what region you are. You know, it's, granted, like, there's new enemies and stuff throughout, but it never really, you don't have to change how you think about going through each area too much. You can kind of just go. Oh, you're playing to the music.
Yeah, well, I mean, I have nothing better to do when you're waiting.
Yeah. Whereas here you have to, there's a lot of puzzle solving and thinking involving just getting around from place to place, which I appreciate.
Mm.
Also, there's lots of boss battles when you're doing the overhead, and most of them are pretty fun. But when you're in the tank, I think there's like maybe 4 or 5 tank bosses throughout the whole game, if I remember correctly. Yeah, I haven't played this in a while. That's one thing that 2 definitely does better, is there's more tank bosses. Like, there's at least one on every planet. Every main planet, at least. So, I appreciate that for sure.
I want my kill you gun.
Well, then you should have gotten good at video game, Ryan.
Actually, this tie gun is actually pretty good.
The
electric ball thing.
Oh, that's the one where if you shoot someone and then there's another guy next to you.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, that was one of my favorite ones. In some instances, it is straight up better than the laser blaster. Like, if there's a lot of enemies nearby, or if you don't have a good angle to get a shot at it, it's one of the best ones.
Mm-hmm.
I think there are also some enemies that take more damage to electricity, but I haven't, looked into it, so who knows.
It's very convenient.
Don't jump down the ladder. Don't jump down the ladder.
It's very convenient how you can just Mega Man out the moment you collect that thing that the boss drops.
It doesn't always do that, though, which is annoying.
Well, there's generally a difference between the levels where you do that. Like, there are some areas that are basically just there to explore, and then there's minor stuff in it, and you don't really need to go in there at all. And those are the ones where you have to walk back out. But whenever you have a boss or have a major upgrade that you find, then you warp out. That's one thing that 2 also does better, where your frog is just your pocket teleportation frog. And you can teleport back to your ship whenever you want, pretty much, which is hella convenient, but makes not a lot of sense. But we don't talk about that. This game, I also remember that this game gets a lot more entertaining when you do get your robot friend.
Yeah, go because Jason has someone to talk to.
Yeah, there's just not a lot going on. And I mean, the story's pretty, like, typical anime trash. You know, not to be mean about it. But, you know, it's not anything special. But it's just nice having... They put a lot of effort into making a story for this kind of game, which you don't really need to do.
Well, I think it's going for like 80s anime trash.
Yeah, that is true. You know, but I think
because it's based off of an 80s game. It's going for really crappy 80s anime sort of feel.
Yeah, but it's just that you could have not really made much of a story at all, and I feel like people wouldn't have minded that much. Like, they could have had an incredibly minimalist story where all you're doing is finding the frog.
I appreciate it. Nonetheless.
I don't know.
No, that's what I mean, because if they could have done it, but they didn't. So that's a good thing.
One of the things about minimalist stories in Metroidvania is that it seems like it's the thing to do, to the point where people just do it because they're expected to.
Well, that's one thing about it is that a lot of the dialogue is optional. When you find the side character, I forget her name. There's just a button you can press in your pause menu, and you can just talk to her whenever you want, and she'll say different things about each area you're in. There's a lot of optional dialogue because it updates.
Yeah,
after...
so much so that it updates after like every flag.
Yeah, pretty much. And there's also a lot of like explanations about, you know, this is where the game is better than the NES one, because if you talk to her, she'll like talk about what weapon you're using and what are its pros and cons and stuff like that. So there's a lot of dialogue, and they didn't really need to do it, but they made it optional just in case you don't give a crap. And I think every mandatory cutscene you can either mash through the text pretty quick or skip out right with the start button. So it's not even like they're forcing you to do it.
That isn't really the kind of thing I was talking about. I was more talking about, like, when a Metroidvania-type game comes out, it seems like developers think that they have to be minimalistic because Metroid Prime and Dark Souls did it. And, you know, it's cool when it's done right, but, you know, I see too many minimalist stories, and I start to really hunger for something with meat on its bones, you know?
Well, I wouldn't really call it meaty, but I am glad that Bloodstained tried to have a relatively well-developed story with characters. And I mean, that game's story isn't really anything special either.
Yeah.
But the characters are fun, and I appreciate it trying to not just be Castlevania again. I mean, it is just Castlevania again in a lot of ways, but they do attempt to change certain things.
Well, the Castlevania Metroidvanias were actually sort of the ones that did try to do substantial stories. I mean, setting aside Symphony of the Night, which really was just, okay, we're in this castle and we need to kill Dracula now, that was less minimalistic and more just had a very simplistic plot. But
well, I mean, I guess even that game, they tried to have some mystery about, like, what the hell happened to Richter. You know? Like, they did try to do something like that.
Oh, yeah, I know. I'm talking more about storytelling style than I am about story content. Symphony of the Night was one that threw characters and dialogue at you on a fairly regular basis. Like, it might not necessarily have had anything complicated going on with them, but it did do things like you fight the succubus boss, and it really gets under Alucard's skin by... It tries to get under Alucard's skin by reminding him of his mother's death, and it works to the succubus's detriment. But, you know... that kind of thing, you know, the story is actively happening as opposed to being something that you have to dig out of the game with mining tools.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
I think a game that reaches a good middle ground with that is Hollow Knight. Because Hollow Knight has a lot of like the lore type of storytelling where, you know, like a lot happened over the course of in the course of the game's backstory, and so like there's not really a lot of plot happening in the present of the game, which I feel like a lot of Metroidvanias go for, Dark Souls type stuff go for that, where 90% of the story happened off screen and you're just doing like the ending act.
Yeah,
You know,
you're learning about it
but
post hoc.
yeah, but I liked the way that Hollow Knight did it because there's still lots of characters that you can actively talk to and change their lives as you go about. Like, you know, like there's big ones like Hornet, for example, but even small stuff like, oh god, the guy with the bag on his head from Hollow Knight, whose name I don't remember. But like there's a lot of stuff going on with that. So I think that reached a good middle ground when it came to when it came to trying to have a minimalist story, but with a lot of, but not one that felt so minimalist that it wasn't present. You know, there was stuff happening most of the time.
Ah, slowly encroaching wall of doom. Slowly encroaching wall of doom.
It's okay. It'll slow down when it gets too close in order to give us just that little bit of extra time. I mean, what?
Also, it stops conveniently when I change rooms.
Yes, you know, that wall with the big hole in it is doing a great job of stopping
Yes.
the incoming waves. I believe another one comes at you at some point in this dungeon too, or am I making?
No,
that up?
I don't think so. No, the water area later has something similar to it.
Okay. That's probably what. Oh, I remember that now. Actually, okay.
For some reason, my mind is just jumping to Aladdin on Genesis, and I'm hoping that they keep this in the remaster. But like, after the Cave of Wonders lava level, you're flying out of the lava on the magic carpet, right? And it's such a bullshit level where you have to dodge boulders coming at you. The genie's hand will pop up and say, "Hey, go up, or go down, dumbass, or stay, or go up or down. Just stay out of the middle." It's such a bullshit level that the game actually just lets you straight up skip it if you die too many times.
So, we were doing the Fund the Charity Room marathon a couple of weeks back, and the Genesis Aladdin game was one of the games that was being played.
Oh, this
And
is probably
no
what you were
joke,
thinking of.
yeah. And when I saw that level, like, and I saw the genie's hand coming up, my first thought was, oh, the boulder's coming that way. We should go down. But when so I was really surprised when I saw that, no, you're actually supposed to go towards where the genie hand is, because that's just how the game works. So that confused me.
That's one of those trial and error things you kind of have to figure out from each individual game.
I also remember that Derek got a game over in like the first level,
And then it skipped him like 3 levels.
skipped
Yeah.
like immediately to the carpet ride you were talking about, and it was just like, wow, okay. But yeah, it's such a weird choice to bring that game back now of all times, because
Eh.
I feel like
Well, Aladdin and Lion King came out this year.
We just got the
that's true.
live action things, and so now we're getting remasters of games that will remind us about how good the originals were in comparison.
It's just I don't know. I felt like there was more demand for the other Disney stuff that came out, like the DuckTales thing.
Yeah,
and
no
the Disney
one
Afternoon
really
stuff.
no one really cares about Lion King other than how bullshit hard it is.
I would say you're half right, but the other thing about those particular Disney games was just how nice they looked at the time.
Yeah. No, I mean, no, people like Aladdin, and Aladdin's a legitimately good, if not terribly original game.
Yeah, yeah.
It gets by how it looks more than anything else, but Lion King is. I compare Lion King to Battletoads. People only remember it because it's hard.
Well,
Not because it's
Battletoads.
actually
Well, I
good.
mean, Battletoads also, if we're talking about it's also production values, because Battletoads is
Yeah.
a very pretty game for the time. But from what I've seen, it is not well designed at
Yeah.
all.
Because Lion King on Super Nintendo and Genesis was specifically made to be really, really hard, so kids couldn't beat it in a weekend with a rental.
Yeah.
like, was there even was like one version worse about that than the other, or
Not that I recall.
because I hear a lot of arguing about what version of Aladdin is better, SNES or Genesis, but
yeah, it's because like
I hear the same stuff about Lion King. Sorry,
Back-
no matter which version.
back in the
I see.
day, developers either didn't want to or probably couldn't, because Nintendo was being an asshole around that time. They couldn't do like identical games on both the Sega Genesis and the Super Nintendo, even if they wanted to have a licensed game for their movie on both. So they would make two completely different ones. So you get stuff like Alien 3, which I think on Super Nintendo is a straight up Metroidvania, and on Genesis is bullshit. Um,
there you go.